Can a mountain consume the human mind in less than 7 minutes? Imagine 6 elite athletes, hardened by years of survival, suddenly bleeding from their eyes, screaming in a language no one understands, and tearing at their own throats until they fall silent. Only one 17-year-old girl escaped to tell a story so terrifying that for decades, the world refused to believe it. Welcome to the Anomaly Archive. The River Sneznia flows cold and fast through the valleys of southern Siberia. It is August, 1993. A group of kayakers is drifting downstream, enjoying the late summer sun, expecting nothing but the sound of the water and the deep silence of the ancient forest. But then, they see a figure on the shore. Standing on a jagged rock is a young girl. She does not look like a hiker anymore. She looks like a ghost that has just crawled out of a fresh grave. Her clothes are torn to rags, caked in dried mud. Her face is swollen from hundreds of insect bites and the salt of endless tears. Her eyes are wide, fixed with a primal horror that no 17-year-old should ever know. She waves her arms frantically, screaming in silence against the roar of the river. When the kayakers pull their boats to the bank and approach her, she cannot speak. She is in a state of catatonic shock, shaking so violently that her teeth chatter like breaking glass. She clings to these strangers as if they are the only real things left in a crumbling universe. She tries to tell them what happened, but the words are broken, interrupted by heavy, jagged sobs. She mentions blood flowing from eyes. She mentions a madness that turned her friends into monsters. She mentions people smashing their heads against rocks until they simply stopped moving. The kayakers do not know it yet, but they have just found Valentina Utochenko, the sole survivor of a massacre that defies logic, defies medicine, and defies every law of the natural world. Just a few days ago, there were 7 of them. Master hikers, led by a woman with an iron will. Now, 6 lie dead on the mountain slopes above, their bodies frozen in poses of absolute agony, eyes and ears bleeding, mouths filled with thick foam. This is not just a tragedy. This is a biological puzzle, wrapped in a waking nightmare. To understand how 6 people died, in a matter of minutes, we must first understand who they were. This is vital, because the first theory people always jump to is incompetence. They assume these were amateurs who got lost in the snow, or children who panicked when the temperature dropped. But that is an insult to the victims. And factually, it is wrong. The group came from Petropavlovsk, a city in the north of Kazakhstan. They were members of a mountaineering club called Azimut. Their leader was Ludmila Korovina. She was 41 years old. Ludmila was no weekend hiker. She was a master of the mountains. She held the title of Master of Sports in hiking, a prestigious Soviet-era rank reserved only for the elite. She was known as a hard coach, strict, disciplined, and fiercely protective of her students. Her students loved her. They called her Mother when they were out on the trail.
Wait, did you bring the... Thought you had it.
For this specific expedition, in the summer of 1993, Ludmila handpicked her team. She chose her 6 best students for a level 3 hike. In the Russian classification system, level 3 implies significant difficulty. It requires high endurance and advanced survival skills. Look at the roster. Alexander, 23 years old. His friends called him Sasha. He was a graduate student at a technical university in Moscow. Smart and tough. He was Ludmila's favorite student. Essentially, her second in command. Tatyana, 24 years old.
All right, everyone, keep moving.
The oldest of the students, known for her bubbly personality and her refusal to quit, no matter how heavy the pack. Denis, 19 years old. Quiet, strong, and reliable. Victor Iya, 17 years old. Timur, 15 years old. The youngest of the group, but physically gifted and eager to prove himself among the older hikers. And finally, Valentina Utochenko, 17 years old. Remember her name, Valentina. They had trained for months. This trip was meant to be the qualifying hike for a massive regional competition. Ludmila wanted her team to be perfect. Their destination was the Khamar-Daban mountain range, located in the Republic of Buryatia, just south of Lake Baikal. Khamar-Daban is one of the oldest mountain ranges on the planet. It is beautiful, lush with forests and rivers, but it is also treacherous. The locals have many names for the peaks here, but the weather is the true ruler of the range. Winds can shift in a heartbeat, turning a sunny summer day into a freezing vortex. It was the evening of August 4th, 1993. The group was high up, on the slopes of the peak called Retranslator. They were only a short distance from the summit, but the weather had turned vicious.
Keep moving, stay together.
Rain fell like sheets of ice, mixing with wet, heavy snow. The wind screamed across the ridge at speeds that made it difficult to stand.
Right there, on that flat rock.
Ludmila made a decision. She ordered the group to set up camp right there, on the exposed, barren slope. To this day, experts cannot explain this choice. There was a forest, only a few hundred meters below them. The trees would have provided shelter from the wind, wood for a fire,
We need to get this
and
fire
warmth.
started quickly.
Why did a master hiker, like Ludmila, choose to stay on the open ridge?
Visibility 0.
Was she trying to toughen her students? Or was the visibility so low that she didn't realize how close the tree line was? They spent a miserable night in the tents, soaked to the bone, shivering, eating cold rations because they couldn't light a stove in the gale. August 5th, 11 a.m. The storm showed no mercy. The group packed their gear. They were exhausted, but they needed to move. Suddenly, Sasha, the strongest, the second in command, began to scream. He wasn't screaming in fear. He was screaming in pain. He fell to his knees. Blood began to pour from his ears. Foam began to bubble from his mouth. Ludmila rushed to him.
Get up, we have to move.
She grabbed him, yelling for the others to help.
Anyone there?
But then, the madness spread like a virus. Tatyana was next. She began to bash her head against the rocks. Hard. Again and again. Until her skull cracked open. She was clawing at her own throat, as if trying to rip out her own windpipe. Denis and Victor Iya began to run. But they weren't running away. They were running in circles, crying out in a language that Valentina did not recognize. Timur, the 15-year-old, simply collapsed. His body went into violent convulsions. Ludmila was still holding Sasha, but he was already dead. She looked up at Valentina. Her eyes were wide, filled with the realization of something terrible. And then, the Iron Woman, the woman who had survived everything the Soviet wilderness could throw at her, simply fell over. She stopped breathing within seconds. Valentina was standing in the middle of a graveyard. 6 friends, her mentors, dying or dead. Their faces were turning blue. She saw blood. So much blood. On the gray rocks. She tried to help Victor E. Ya. But Victor E. Ya bit her. A savage, animalistic bite.
I've got you.
Victor E. Ya's eyes rolled back in her head. She was spitting blood at Valentina. The air itself felt heavy, tingling with a strange energy. Valentina realized one thing. If she stayed here, she would die too. She grabbed her backpack.
Look back.
She didn't even look back. She ran. She ran down the mountain, away from the screams, away from the blood, away from the people she loved, who had turned into monsters. For the next 4 days, Valentina was a ghost in the woods. She had no map, no compass. She was following the river, hoping it led to civilization. The nights were the worst. She could hear the wind, and in the wind, she heard the voices of the dead. She thought she saw Sasha standing behind the trees. She thought she saw Ludmila pointing the way. She was starving, dehydrated, but her survival instinct was primal. On the 3rd day, she found an abandoned watchtower. She hoped for food, a radio, but it was empty. Dust and silence. She kept moving downstream. The River Sneznia was her only guide. When she finally saw the kayakers, she thought they were a hallucination.
Kayakers.
She thought the universe was playing one last cruel joke on her. But they were real.
I've got you. You're safe.
And when they took her in, when they fed her, and wrapped her in warm blankets, the dam broke. She told them everything. But what she told them made no sense. 6 healthy, powerful people do not just bleed from their eyes and die in 7 minutes. Not from the cold. Not from a storm. After Valentina was rescued, on August 10th, the world began to learn of the horror on the mountain. But there was a problem. The authorities did not act immediately. An official search operation was not launched until August 24th. 2 weeks. 6 bodies had been lying on that barren slope for 14 days, exposed to the sun, the rain, and the wild predators. When the search helicopters finally took off, the pilots were looking for a needle in a massive haystack of rock. Valentina was still in deep shock. Her memory of the exact location was blurred by the storm and her own terror. It took 2 days of flying over the jagged peaks of Khamar-Daban. On August 26th, they spotted something near the summit of Retranslator at an altitude of 2,400 meters. Bright colors against the dull gray stone. It was the campsite. The site that greeted the search team looked like something from a war zone. The bodies were scattered. They were not huddled together for warmth, as you would expect in a case of freezing. Instead, they were spread out, as if they were trying to flee an invisible enemy.
Invisible enemy.
The searchers noted a detail that chilled them to the bone. Most of the hikers had removed their clothing. in the middle of a freezing mountain range. Some were in only their tights. 3 of them had no shoes.
There he is.
Their clothes were scattered nearby, torn, as if they had been ripped off in a frenzy. The bodies were bloated and heavily decomposed. But even through the decay, the positions they died in told a story of agony. Ludmila Korovina was found near where Sasha had collapsed. The others were found further down the slope, exactly as Valentina had described. But one thing was missing. There were no signs of a struggle, no animal tracks, no sign of a lightning strike. Just 6 dead hikers, and a silence that felt heavy enough to crush a man. The bodies were flown by helicopter to Ulan-Ude for autopsy. The forensic doctors were looking for answers, but the results they found only deepened the mystery. The official cause of death for 5 of the hikers was listed as hypothermia, exposure to the cold.
Classified since
Ludmila
1963.
Korovina's death was attributed to a heart attack. On the surface, this sounds like a simple, tragic accident. But when you look at the details, the official explanation starts to crumble. First, the state of their lungs. The autopsy revealed that all the victims had bruised lungs. Medical experts call this pulmonary edema. Fluid had built up in their lungs, so fast that they were essentially drowning on dry land. Hypothermia can cause this, but usually over a long period of time. According to Valentina, these people went from healthy to dead in minutes. Second, the protein deficiency. The report mentioned that the hikers showed signs of malnutrition. This makes no sense. They were only 4 days into a well-provisioned trip. They had plenty of food in their backpacks. Why did their body chemistry react as if they hadn't eaten in weeks? And then, there is the matter of the blood. Valentina was adamant. She saw blood coming from their eyes and ears. She saw them foaming at the mouth. Yet, the autopsy report downplayed these symptoms. Some believe the decomposition made it impossible to verify the bleeding. Others believe the authorities were covering something up. Think about it. Bleeding from the eyes and ears is not a symptom of freezing. It is a symptom of something much more violent. Something that attacks the central nervous system, or something that causes a massive, sudden shift in internal pressure. Was it a nerve agent? Was it a biological weapon? Or was it something the mountain itself created? The forensic doctors closed the file. The documents were stamped, and the bodies were buried. But for Valentina, the nightmare was just beginning. She has to live with the memory of her friend's final moments. The way Tatyana beat her head against the stone. The way Victor Iya looked at her, with eyes that were no longer human. She knows what she saw. And she knows that hypothermia is a lie. The Khamar-Daban incident has become known as Russia's second Dyatlov pass, a puzzle with pieces that do not fit. Some scientists suggest infrasound, low-frequency sound waves generated by the wind hitting the unique shape of the mountain peaks. Infrasound is silent to the human ear, but it can cause the brain to vibrate. It can cause hallucinations, intense panic, and even physical internal damage. Others point to the nearby Lake Baikal. They suggest a rare toxin from an algae bloom that could have been carried by the rain. A toxin that when inhaled, causes immediate, violent neurological failure. And then, there is the military theory. The Soviet Union was gone, but its secrets remained. Were they testing a new chemical agent? Something like Novichok? Did the hikers simply walk into an invisible cloud of death, drifting across the ridge? Valentina Utochenko rarely speaks about that day anymore. She lives a quiet life. But the mountains of Buryatia still stand. They still watch. And they still keep the secret of those 7 minutes in 1993. What do you believe? Can the wind itself drive a human being to self-destruct? Or was there a human hand behind the madness on the ridge? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Which file should we open next? Stay observant.